Left at the altar by his glamorous fiancée, Wyatt Lawson retreats into solitude until Emma Hayes, his steadfast farmhand, quietly picks up the pieces. But when the woman who broke his heart returns, determined to reclaim him, Wyatt must decide: chase a past that left him broken, or embrace the love that's been there all along. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The small town of Riverdale was buzzing with excitement. Today was the wedding day of Wyatt Lawson, the most eligible bachelor in 3 counties. His family, farm Lawson Acres, stretched for miles in every direction, a testament to 4 generations of hard work and smart investments. At 42, Wyatt had built the modest family property into an empire, with the most advanced equipment, prize-winning horses, and the most productive fields in the state. But for all his success, Wyatt's personal life had always taken a back seat until Victoria Winters came to town. The daughter of a wealthy businessman from the city, she had swept into his life like a summer storm, all blonde hair and designer clothes. After a whirlwind 6-month courtship, Wyatt had proposed, and Victoria had said yes. Now, standing at the altar of Riverdale Community Church, Wyatt adjusted his tie for the 10th time and glanced at his watch. "She's later," he muttered to his best man, his childhood friend Tom. "Brides are always late," Tom replied with a reassuring pat on Wyatt's shoulder. "It's tradition." But as the minutes ticked by, the murmurs from the packed church grew louder. 30 minutes late became 45, and Wyatt's confident smile began to falter. Finally, Victoria's maid of honor burst through the doors, her face pale. "She's gone," she announced, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent church. Victoria left a note. She can't go through with it." The church erupted in gasps and whispers. Wyatt stood frozen, the blood draining from his face. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not today. "What does the note say?" he demanded, his voice barely controlled. The maid of honor hesitated, then handed him a folded piece of paper. Wyatt's hands shook as he opened it. "Wyatt, I'm sorry, but I can't marry you. You're a good man, but this life, the farm, the small town, all of it, it's not for me. I thought I could adjust, but I can't. I deserve more than being buried in the countryside, and you deserve someone who loves this life as much as you do. Please don't try to find me." Victoria Wyatt crumpled the note in his fist, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. 200 pairs of eyes stared at him. Friends, family, business associates, the entire town, all witnessing his most private heartbreak. "The wedding is off," he announced, his voice raw. "Please go home." Without another word, he strode down the aisle and out of the church, ignoring the sympathetic murmurs and pitying glances that followed him. Among the crowd of guests filtering out of the church was Emma Hayes, though few would have noticed her. At 35, Emma was the kind of woman who blended into the background, not because she wasn't pretty, but because she never drew attention to herself. Her simple blue dress was the nicest thing she owned, saved for special occasions like this. Emma worked at Lawson Acres, taking care of the horses and helping with whatever needed doing. She'd been there for nearly 10 years, ever since her father passed away and left her with nothing but debts. Wyatt had given her a job when no one else would, and over the years she'd developed feelings for him that went far beyond gratitude, not that he'd ever noticed. To Wyatt, she was just reliable Emma, the quiet farmhand who had a way with horses, the invisible woman who made sure everything ran smoothly, and that was fine with her. Until Victoria came along, Emma had watched the romance unfold from a distance, had heard the wedding announcement with a smile plastered on her face, had even helped decorate the barn for the engagement party. And now, as she walked slowly back to her small cottage on the edge of the Lawson property, she felt a confusing mix of emotions. Sympathy for Wyatt's pain, a tiny flicker of hope she immediately tried to extinguish, and guilt for feeling anything, but sadness at his heartbreak. "It's not right to feel this way," she muttered to herself as she changed out of her dress and into her work clothes. No matter what had happened, the horses still needed tending to, and work was the best distraction from complicated feelings. For the next week, Wyatt Lawson vanished from public view. He'd retreated to his sprawling farmhouse, blinds drawn, calls unanswered. Rumors spread through town like wildfire. He was drinking heavily. He destroyed all evidence of Victoria in a rage. He was selling the farm and moving away. The truth, as Emma observed from her daily duties, was both simpler and more concerning. Wyatt wasn't destructive, he was absent. He moved through his days like a ghost, mechanically handling essential business, but neglecting everything else. The carefully tended garden outside his house withered. The horses he usually visited daily looked toward the house in confusion. Missing their master's attention, Emma tried to pick up the slack, staying late to make sure everything was taken care of. She didn't do it for extra pay or recognition. She did it because she couldn't bear to see anything Wyatt loved fall into neglect. On the 8th day after the wedding that wasn't, Emma found herself making a beef stew in her cottage kitchen. She didn't plan it as anything special, but as the rich aroma filled her small home, she made a decision. Putting some of the stew in a container, she walked up to the main house and left it on the porch with a simple note: "You need to eat. Emma." She didn't wait to see if he would take it, just returned to her cottage and tried not to think about it. But the next morning, the container was on her doorstep, clean and empty. It became a pattern. Every evening, Emma would leave some home-cooked food on Wyatt's porch: stew, casserole, fresh bread pie, simple, hearty meals that spoke of care without intruding on his isolation. Every morning, the empty containers would appear at her door. They never spoke about it. In fact, they barely spoke at all during those first few weeks. When their paths crossed during the workday, Wyatt would give a terse nod, and Emma would return it. But she noticed that sometimes his eyes would linger on her a moment longer than necessary, with a flicker of something, gratitude perhaps, or simple awareness that she existed. A month after the failed wedding, Wyatt finally emerged from his shell, if only partially. He began to take more interest in the farm operations again, holding meetings with his managers, inspecting the fields, checking on the livestock. The change was subtle but noticeable to everyone, especially Emma. One evening in late summer, as twilight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma was in the stable tending to a pregnant mare named Daisy, who had been showing signs of distress. The foal wasn't due for another 2 weeks, but Emma had a feeling things might be progressing faster than expected. "Easy, girl," she murmured, stroking Daisy's neck as the horse shifted uncomfortably. "Let's get you comfortable." She was so focused on the mare that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a deep voice spoke from the stable doorway. "Is something wrong with Daisy?" Emma jumped slightly, turning to find Wyatt standing there, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading light outside. "I think she might be going into labor early," Emma explained, turning back to the mare. "I've called Doc Wilson, but he's out on another call. He said he'd be here as soon as he can." Wyatt stepped closer, concern etched on his face. Daisy was one of his favorite horses, the offspring of his first mare, a high school graduation gift from his father. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked, his voice softer than Emma had heard it in weeks. "You could hold her head, talk to her," Emma suggested. "She knows your voice." Wyatt nodded and moved to the mare's head, beginning to murmur soothing words. Emma continued checking Daisy's vital signs, her hands gentle but confident. For the next hour, they worked together in quiet synchrony. When Doc Wilson finally arrived, he found the situation well in hand, with Emma clearly knowing exactly what she was doing. "Looks like you've got this under control," the vet said approvingly. "Let's bring this foal into the world." The birth was difficult but successful, as the wobbly-legged foal took its first breath and Daisy began to clean her baby. Wyatt and Emma stood back, watching the miracle with identical expressions of wonder. "You were amazing," Wyatt said suddenly, turning to look at Emma. "I had no idea you knew so much about foaling." Emma blushed slightly, unused to direct praise from him. "My dad raised horses when I was growing up. I've been helping with births since I was a teenager." "Well, you saved Daisy and her foal tonight," Wyatt said, his eyes truly focusing on her face, perhaps for the first time. "Thank you." Those simple words, delivered with genuine warmth, made Emma's heart flutter in a way she immediately tried to suppress. "It's my job," she said with a small shrug. "No," Wyatt replied thoughtfully. "Your job ended 3 hours ago. This was above and beyond. There was an awkward moment of silence, both of them suddenly aware that this was the longest conversation they'd had in years. "I should get home," Emma said finally, "unless you need anything else?" "No, go ahead, you must be exhausted." Wyatt hesitated, then added, "And thank you for the food, too. It's been helpful." Emma nodded, unable to form words with the lump in her throat. She gave Daisy and her foal one last check, then slipped out of the stable into the cool night air, her mind whirling with the unexpected connection of the evening. The next morning, Emma arrived at the stables earlier than usual, eager to check on Daisy and her foal. To her surprise, Wyatt was already there, sitting on a bale of hay near the stall, watching the mother and baby. "Morning," he said, standing as she entered. "I couldn't sleep, so I came to check on them." "How are they doing?" Emma asked, peering into the stall. "Good. The foal nursed twice during the night." Wyatt ran a hand through his hair, which was slightly rumpled, suggesting he'd been there for hours. "I was thinking we should name him." "Oh?" Emma was surprised. Wyatt usually named the horses himself, often after elements from Greek mythology for the thoroughbreds. "What do you think of Miracle?" he suggested. "Because it was pretty miraculous how you helped bring him into the world." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "That's a fine name." An awkward silence fell between them, neither quite knowing how to navigate this new, more personal territory. "Would you like some coffee?" Wyatt asked suddenly. "I made a pot in the office." "Sure," Emma replied, surprised again. She'd worked at Lawson Acres for 10 years and had never once been invited for coffee. They walked side by side to the small office attached to the main stable, their steps falling into a natural rhythm. Inside, Wyatt poured 2 mugs of coffee and handed one to Emma. "Black, right?" he asked. Emma blinked in surprise. "Yes, how did you know?" A faint, rueful smile touched Wyatt's lips. "I notice things sometimes." He took a sip from his own mug, then looked at her over the rim. "I should have noticed more." The simple admission hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither was quite ready to acknowledge. "The farm looks better," Emma said, changing the subject. "The south field is coming along nicely." Wyatt nodded, accepting the shift to safer ground. "Yeah, the new irrigation system is finally working properly." They talked about the farm for a while, comfortable on this familiar terrain. As they finished their coffee, Wyatt cleared his throat. "Emma, I've been thinking. The fall festival is coming up in a few weeks. Would you want to go? With me, I mean, just as friends?" The invitation was so unexpected that Emma nearly dropped her mug. "You want to go to the fall festival with me?" she repeated, certain she'd misheard. Wyatt shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I know it's out of the blue, and I understand if you don't want to. It's just, I've been alone in that house for too long, thinking too much. I need to get out, and I thought, well, you've been kind to me when I didn't deserve it." Emma's heart raced. This wasn't a declaration of love, not even close, but it was something. A crack in the wall Wyatt had built around himself, a tiny opening that allowed her to be more than just the invisible farmhand. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that." The smile that spread across Wyatt's face transformed him, making him look years younger. "Great. That's great." As Emma left the office to start her daily chores, she tried to temper the hope bubbling in her chest. It was just the fall festival, not a promise of anything more. Wyatt was lonely and grateful for her kindness. That was all, but for the first time in a very long time, Emma allowed herself to dream just a little about possibilities she'd long since buried. What neither Emma nor Wyatt knew was that across town, in the luxurious suite of Riverdale's only boutique hotel, Victoria Winters was unpacking her designer suitcases, a determined expression on her perfectly made-up face. "You were a fool to leave him," her mother said from the doorway of the suite. Victoria tossed her blonde hair over her shoulder. "I was a fool to walk away the way I did, but don't worry, Mother. Wyatt Lawson is still the best catch in this backwater town, and I still intend to catch him." "After what you did? The man won't even speak to you." Victoria smiled, a calculating gleam in her eye. "You'd be surprised what a man will forgive when the right buttons are pushed. Besides, Daddy's business deal fell through. We need Wyatt's money and connections more than ever. She walked to the window, looking out at the town that she'd fled from just a month before. Trust me, by Christmas I'll be Mrs. Wyatt Lawson and no one will remember that little wedding day hiccup. As the summer began to fade into fall, the stage was set for a drama that would test the limits of forgiveness, the power of quiet devotion, and the true meaning of love. The Riverdale Fall Festival had been a town tradition for over 100 years. Every September, the town square transformed into a fairground with food stalls, craft vendors, carnival games, and a dance floor under the stars. It marked the transition between summer and fall, a celebration of harvest and community. Before the long winter months ahead, Emma stood in front of her small closet, fretting over what to wear. She hadn't bought new clothes in years, putting most of her modest salary into savings or sending it to help her younger sister through nursing school. Nothing she owned seemed right for an outing with Wyatt Lawson, even if it was just as friends. After trying on nearly everything she owned, she settled on a simple knee-length dress in a warm rust color that brought out the auburn highlights in her brown hair. It wasn't fancy, but it was the best she had. As she pinned her hair half up, leaving some soft curls around her face, Emma tried to calm her racing heart. "It's not a date," she reminded her reflection. "He's just being nice because you helped with the foal and brought him food. Don't read too much into it." But despite her self-admonishments, a flutter of hope persisted in her chest. At precisely 6 o'clock, there was a knock at her cottage door. Emma took a deep breath, smoothed her dress and opened it to find Wyatt standing on her porch, looking handsome in dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt that matched his eyes. "Hi," he said, then stopped, his eyes taking in her appearance. "You look really nice, Emma." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you, so do you." There was an awkward moment of silence before Wyatt gestured toward his truck. "Shall we?" The 10-minute drive to town was filled with safe, neutral conversation about the weather, the farm, and the festival. Emma found herself relaxing as they talked, remembering why she'd always found Wyatt so easy to be around. Beneath his success and status, he was still the down-to-earth farm boy who loved the land and spoke plainly. The town square was already bustling when they arrived. Strings of lights crisscrossed overhead, casting a warm glow over the festivities. The scent of kettle corn, apple cider, and barbecue filled the air, mixing with the sound of laughter, and a local band playing on a small stage. As they walked into the festival together, Emma was acutely aware of the glances and whispers that followed them. Wyatt Lawson, the jilted groom, making his first public appearance since the wedding disaster, and with Emma Hayes of all people. "People are staring," she murmured. Wyatt's jaw tightened slightly, but then he surprised her by taking her hand in his. "Let them. I've spent enough time worrying about what this town thinks." His warm fingers entwined with hers sent a jolt through Emma's body. But she tried to maintain her composure as they made their way through the crowd. They stopped at food stalls, played a few carnival games, Wyatt winning a small stuffed horse, at the ring toss that he presented to Emma with a boyish grin, and greeted neighbors and friends. To Emma's surprise, Wyatt kept hold of her hand for most of the evening, letting go only when necessary. "Wyatt, Emma, come join us," called Tom, Wyatt's best friend, who was sitting with his wife at one of the picnic tables near the dance floor. As they approached, Emma noticed Tom giving Wyatt a questioning look, to which Wyatt responded with a slight shrug and a smile. "Good to see you out and about," Tom said, clapping Wyatt on the shoulder as they sat down. "It's good to be out," Wyatt admitted. "Emma convinced me it was time." Emma blinked in surprise. She'd done no such thing. The fall festival had been entirely his idea, but before she could correct him, the band started playing a slower song, and Tom pulled his wife to the dance floor. "Would you like to dance?" Wyatt asked, turning to Emma with an expression she couldn't quite read. Emma hesitated. "I'm not very good at it." "Neither am I," Wyatt confessed with a smile. "But I think we can manage to sway in a circle without embarrassing ourselves too badly." With a small laugh, Emma nodded and allowed him to lead her to the dance floor. Wyatt's hand rested lightly on her waist, the other holding hers as they began to move to the music. Emma could feel the curious eyes of the townspeople on them, but as Wyatt drew her a little closer, everyone else seemed to fade away. "Thank you," Wyatt said softly, his breath warm against her ear. For what? For saying yes to tonight, for the food you left on my porch every day, for saving Miracle, for seeing me at my worst and still being kind. Emma looked up at him, struck by the sincerity in his blue eyes. You don't have to thank me for that. Yes, I do. His hand tightened slightly on her waist. I've been thinking a lot about the people in my life, Emma, about who stands by you when things get hard. Victoria left because she didn't want the life I could offer. But you've been part of that life for years, quietly making it better. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he must hear it. Wyatt, well, isn't this cozy? The familiar voice sliced through the moment like a knife. Emma felt Wyatt stiffen, his body going rigid against hers. Slowly, they both turned to face the speaker. Victoria Winters stood at the edge of the dance floor, stunning in a designer dress that looked wildly out of place at the small-town festival. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her smile sharp as a razor. "Hello, Wyatt," she said, ignoring Emma completely. "You're looking well." Wyatt's face had gone pale, his jaw clenched tight. "What are you doing here?" "Victoria? I came back for you, of course." She stepped closer, her expensive perfume wafting over them. "Can we talk? Privately?" Emma felt Wyatt's hand slip from her waist, felt the sudden chill of space between them as he took a step back. The magical evening seemed to crumble around her. "I should get home," she said quietly, already backing away. "The horses need an early check tomorrow." "Emma, wait," Wyatt started, but Victoria had already slipped her arm through his, claiming his attention. "Just 5 minutes, Wyatt. That's all I'm asking. After what we meant to each other, don't I deserve at least that?" Emma didn't wait to hear his response. With burning eyes, she turned and walked quickly away from the dance floor, away from the festival, away from the brief, beautiful fantasy that Wyatt Lawson could ever see her as more than a convenient friend. Emma walked all the way home, the 3 miles passing in a blur of hurt and humiliation. By the time she reached her cottage, her feet were blistered from her dress shoes, and her cheeks were streaked with tears she hadn't been able to hold back. "Stupid," she muttered to herself as she kicked off her shoes. So stupid to think he would choose someone like me when he could have someone like her. She changed out of her dress, scrubbed the makeup from her face, and climbed into bed, though sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Victoria's perfectly manicured hand on Wyatt's arm, claiming him. Around midnight, she heard the crunch of tires on the gravel outside her cottage. Sitting up, she peered through the window to see Wyatt's truck in her driveway, the engine idling. For a long moment she watched as he sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, clearly debating whether to come to her door. Finally, he put the truck in reverse and backed out, driving away into the night. Emma lay back down, a fresh wave of tears threatening. Whatever he had wanted to say, he'd decided it wasn't worth saying after all. The next morning, Emma arrived at the stables earlier than usual, hoping to finish her chores before Wyatt appeared. She needed time to compose herself, to find a way to act normal around him after the disaster of the previous night. But when she entered the main stable, Wyatt was already there, mucking out Daisy's stall, a job he hadn't done himself in years. "Morning," he said, straightening up when he saw her. He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd slept as poorly as she had. "Morning," Emma replied, keeping her voice carefully neutral as she moved to check on Miracle. "Emma, about last night." "You don't owe me any explanations," she interrupted, keeping her back to him as she examined the foal. "It was just a friendly outing, like you said." "That's not," Wyatt began, but was cut off by the arrival of one of the other farmhands. "Mr. Lawson, there's a lady up at the main house asking for you. Says she needs to speak with you right away." Emma didn't need to ask who the lady was. She kept her focus on Miracle, stroking the foal's soft nose as he nuzzled her hand. "Tell her I'm busy," Wyatt said firmly. "I tried, sir, but she said she'd wait as long as it takes. She's sitting on your front porch with what looks like a picnic." "Basket," Wyatt sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Fine, I'll be up in a minute." When the farmhand left, Wyatt turned back to Emma. "This isn't over, Emma. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," Emma said, finally turning to face him with a forced smile. "You should go." Victoria's waiting. Something flashed in Wyatt's eyes. Regret, frustration, or maybe just resignation. With a nod, he left the stable, and Emma tried to ignore the ache in her chest as she watched him go. For the next week, Emma did her best to avoid Wyatt, taking on tasks that kept her away from the main house and stables. She volunteered to ride the fences on the far pastures, to take deliveries to the neighboring farms, anything to keep busy and out of his way. But she couldn't avoid hearing the gossip. Victoria Winters was back in town and determined to win Wyatt back. She was at the main house daily, bringing gifts, planning elaborate dinners, filling his life with the glamour and excitement she'd once run from. "Heard she's promised to renovate the whole farmhouse," one of the farmhands said during lunch. "Make it worthy of a man of Wyatt's stature," she says. "She didn't think he was worthy of her time a month ago," another replied with a snort. "What? Changed?" "Her daddy's business went bankrupt," offered a third. "Suddenly Wyatt's farm money is looking mighty attractive again." Emma kept her head down, focusing on her sandwich, trying not to let on how every word stabbed at her heart. "What do you think, Emma? Will the boss take her back?" Emma looked up to find all eyes on her. "It's not my place to have an opinion on Mr. Lawson's personal life," she said evenly. But privately she feared they were right. Victoria was beautiful, sophisticated, the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. And despite what she'd done, she and Wyatt had history together, a connection that Emma could never compete with. On Friday afternoon, as Emma was finishing up her work in the far pasture, she saw Wyatt's truck approaching. Her first instinct was to find a reason to be elsewhere, but she steeled herself to face him. She couldn't avoid him forever, not if she wanted to keep her job. The truck pulled up beside her, and Wyatt got out, his expression unreadable. "You've been avoiding me," he said without preamble. Emma shrugged, focusing on coiling the rope in her hands. "I've been busy. Too busy to check on Miracle. Too busy to collect your containers from my porch. Jake had to bring me dinner yesterday because you weren't around." There was a hint of accusation in his voice that sparked a flare of indignation in Emma. "I wasn't aware that feeding you was part of my job description, Mr. Lawson," she said, the formality deliberate. Wyatt winced at the use of his surname. "It's not, and I'm not talking about your job, Emma. I'm talking about whatever was happening between us before Victoria showed up." Emma felt her cheeks heat. "Nothing was happening between us. You were lonely and I was convenient." "Convenient?" Wyatt repeated incredulously. "Is that what you think?" "What else would it be?" Emma snapped, her composure finally cracking. "You never even saw me for 10 years, Wyatt. Then your perfect bride leaves you at the altar and suddenly I'm interesting. And the minute she crooks her finger at you again, off you go." "That's not fair," Wyatt protested. "I didn't go anywhere." "With Victoria. I've been trying to get rid of her all week. Really. Because that's not what it looks like from where I'm standing. She's at your house every day, planning renovations, bringing you fancy meals. None of which I asked for," Wyatt interrupted, his own temper flaring. "Yes, I talked to her at the festival. She apologized, said she'd made a terrible mistake. I listened because I thought I needed closure. But I told her there was no chance we were getting back together." Emma hesitated, wanting desperately to believe him but afraid to hope. "Then why is she still here?" "Because she doesn't take no for an answer. Because her father's company is in trouble and she needs my money and connections. Because—" Wyatt broke off, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Because what?" Emma prompted softly. Wyatt looked at her, his eyes intense. "Because she knows there's something happening between us, and she's trying to stop it before it can go any further." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Is there something happening between us?" Wyatt stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. "I think there is. I think there has been for a while, and I was too. Blind to see it, but I'm seeing it now, Emma. I'm seeing you." He reached out, his hand hovering just shy of touching her face. "The question is, am I too late?" Victoria paced the length of Wyatt's living room, her patience wearing thin. He'd promised to be back for dinner, and she'd gone to considerable trouble to prepare a romantic evening. Catering from the best restaurant in the county, candles, wine, and herself in a dress that had cost more than most people in this town, made in a month. But it was nearly 8 o'clock and Wyatt was nowhere to be found. Her calls went straight to voicemail, and the farmhands she'd questioned had been suspiciously tight-lipped about his whereabouts. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, checking her reflection in the ornate mirror over the fireplace. No man keeps Victoria Winters waiting, especially not for some farm girl, because she knew that's who he was with. She'd seen the way he looked at Emma Hayes at the festival, had recognized the threat immediately. Emma might not be beautiful in the conventional sense, might not have Victoria's polish or style, but there was something about her, a quiet strength, a genuine warmth, that Victoria couldn't match no matter how hard she tried. The sound of tires on gravel brought her to the window. Wyatt's truck was pulling up and he was alone, a small relief. Victoria quickly adjusted her dress and hair, then arranged herself artfully on the couch, a vision of elegant patience. When Wyatt entered the house, he stopped short at the sight of her, his expression darkening. "What are you doing here, Victoria?" he asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Waiting for you, darling. I made dinner." She gestured to the elaborate spread on the dining table. "I didn't ask you to do that." Wyatt's voice was tired but firm. "In fact, I'm pretty sure I asked you to stop coming by unannounced." Victoria rose gracefully from the couch and moved toward him. "You can't still be angry about the wedding, Wyatt. I've apologized 1,000 times. I got cold feet, that's all. It happens to lots of brides." "This isn't about the wedding anymore." Wyatt remained by the door, making no move to come further into the room. "This is about you not respecting my wishes or my space. Is this because of her?" Victoria asked, a note of disdain creeping into her voice. "That stable girl you were dancing with, really, Wyatt, I know you're hurt, but you can do so much better." Something dangerous flashed in Wyatt's eyes. "Her name is Emma. And yes, this is partly about her, but it's mostly about you and me, Victoria. We're not good for each other. We never were. I was just too blinded by whatever it was between us to see it." "You don't mean that," Victoria said, taking another step toward him, her voice dropping to a seductive purr. "We were amazing together. We can be again. I made one mistake. Don't throw away everything we had because of it." "It wasn't just one mistake," Wyatt replied quietly. "It was all the little things leading up to it. The way you talked about the farm like it was some backward place you were stuck in. The way you rolled your eyes when I got excited about a new foal or a good harvest. The way you tried to change me into someone I'm not." Victoria's perfect composure began to crack. "So you're choosing her, that plain, boring nobody." "Emma sees me, Victoria, the real me, not the bank account or the social status, just me, and she loves what she sees." Wyatt's voice softened with wonder at the realization. "Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "She's in love with you." Victoria laughed, a brittle sound. "Of course she is. Half the women in this town are. They see dollar signs when they look at you, Wyatt. At least I'm honest about wanting the finer things in life." "Emma's not like that," Wyatt said firmly. "She's been turning down raises for years because she thinks the other workers need them more. She lives in that tiny cottage when I've offered her bigger accommodations 12 times. She works harder than anyone I know, not for money, but because she cares about this place almost as much as I do." "You're making a mistake," Victoria warned, her voice hardening. "That woman will never be able to give you the life you deserve, the connections you need to take Lawson Acres to the next level. I don't want to take it to the next level if it means losing sight of what matters," Wyatt said. "Now, I'd like you to leave, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't come back." Victoria stared at him for a long moment, her beautiful face twisted with anger and disbelief. Then, without another word, she snatched up her purse and strode to the door, pausing only to deliver a final barb. "You'll regret this, Wyatt Lawson, when you're stuck in this backwater town with your plain little farm girl, watching your empire stagnate. You'll wish you'd made a different choice." Wyatt held the door open for her. "Goodbye, Victoria." As her car disappeared down the long driveway, Wyatt let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For the first time since the wedding disaster, he felt truly free, Not just of Victoria, but of the expectations and appearances he'd been trying to maintain for so long. He looked toward the distant lights of Emma's cottage, a smile spreading across his face. Tomorrow he would tell her everything, how he felt, what he wanted for their future. But tonight, he needed to make some plans of his own. In her cottage, Emma sat by the window, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands as she stared out at the stars. Her conversation with Wyatt in the pasture had left her in a state of cautious hope. He'd admitted there was something between them, had claimed he was trying to get rid of Victoria, but he hadn't actually said he'd chosen Emma. He hadn't declared his feelings beyond a vague acknowledgement that something was happening. And when they'd parted, he'd simply said he had something to take care of and would see her tomorrow. Emma wasn't naive enough to believe that Victoria would give up easily. The woman had come back to Riverdale with a purpose, and she clearly had the resources and determination to get what she wanted. It doesn't matter, Emma told herself firmly. Whatever happens with Wyatt, I'll be fine. I was fine before him, and I'll be fine after. But as she finally went to bed, her heart whispered a different truth, that after a taste of what could be with Wyatt Lawson, fine would never be enough again. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with the first real hint of autumn in the air. Emma rose early as always, her mind still swirling with thoughts of Wyatt and their conversation in the pasture. What had he meant when he said he had something to take care of? Had he truly sent Victoria away for good? She dressed quickly in her work clothes and headed out to start her chores, determined to keep busy rather than dwell on questions she couldn't answer. The routine of the farm, feeding the horses, mucking out stalls, checking on Miracle and Daisy, provided a comforting structure to her chaotic emotions. By mid-morning, there was still no sign of Wyatt. Emma tried not to read too much into his absence, though anxiety gnawed at her stomach. Had Victoria somehow convinced him to give her another chance? Was he avoiding Emma, now that he'd had time to reconsider what he'd said yesterday? "You're jumping to conclusions," she muttered to herself as she brushed down one of the older mares. "Give the man a chance to explain before you decide what he's thinking." Just as she finished with the mare, the stable door opened, and Jake, one of the other farmhands, stuck his head in. "Hey, Emma, boss wants to see you at the main house. Says it's important." Emma's heart leapt into her throat. "Did he say what it's about?" Jake shrugged. "Nope, just said to tell you to come up when you finish with Silver here." He gestured to the mare Emma had been brushing. "Thanks, Jake. I'll head up now." Emma quickly put away the grooming tools and checked her appearance in the small mirror that hung in the tack room. Her hair was pulled back in its usual practical ponytail, her face free of makeup, her clothes serviceable but far from glamorous. For a brief moment, she wished she could present herself to Wyatt looking more like Victoria. Polished, sophisticated, beautiful. "He either wants me as I am, or he doesn't," she told her reflection firmly, then turned away and headed toward the main house. The Lawson farmhouse was a grand old structure that had grown over generations, with additions built as the family, and their prosperity expanded. The original cabin, dating back to the 1880s, formed the heart of the home, with newer wings extending in both directions. The result was an impressive but still welcoming home that spoke of history and permanence. Emma rarely had reason to visit the main house. Her work kept her in the stables and fields, and when she'd left food for Wyatt, she'd always placed it on the porch, rather than knocking on the door. Now she hesitated at the bottom of the wide front steps, suddenly uncertain. Before she could decide whether to knock or simply call out, the door opened and Wyatt appeared. He was dressed casually in jeans and a flannel shirt, his dark hair slightly rumpled, but his eyes were clear and focused as they landed on her. "Emma," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "You came. Jake said you wanted to see me," she replied, still standing at the bottom of the steps. "I do, very much." He gestured for her to come up. "Please, come in." Emma climbed the steps slowly, her heart pounding a staccato rhythm against her ribs. When she reached the top, Wyatt surprised her by taking her hand, his touch warm and sure. "I have something to show you," he said, leading her inside. Emma had expected to enter the formal living room where visitors were usually received, but instead, Wyatt guided her through to the large country kitchen at the back of the house. There she stopped in surprise. The kitchen table was set for breakfast with fresh flowers, cloth napkins, and delicious smells coming from several covered dishes. A pot of coffee sat ready beside 2 mugs, and a small vase held a single perfect daisy, her favorite flower, though she'd never told Wyatt that. "What's all this?" Emma asked, turning to look at him. Wyatt's expression was a mix of nervousness and hope. "Breakfast. I made it myself. Well, tried to anyway. Mrs. Collins from town helped with the more complicated parts." "You cooked for me?" Emma was stunned. Wyatt Lawson, who could afford to hire the best chefs in the state, had made her breakfast with his own hands. "It seemed only fair after all the meals you made for me." He pulled out a chair for her. "Please sit, before it gets cold." Still bewildered, Emma sat down and Wyatt took the seat across from her. He uncovered the dishes to reveal fluffy scrambled eggs, bacon, homemade biscuits, and fresh fruit. "This looks amazing," Emma said honestly. "Try it before you get too impressed," Wyatt warned with a self-deprecating smile. "The biscuits are a bit dense." Emma took a biscuit and broke it open. It was indeed a little heavier than ideal, but as she took a bite, she found the flavor was good. "It's perfect," she assured him. They ate in silence for a few minutes, an undercurrent of tension running beneath the quiet domesticity of the scene. Finally, Wyatt put down his fork and looked directly at her. "Victoria's gone," he said simply. "For good this time." Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression carefully neutral. "Are you sure about that?" She seemed pretty determined. "I'm sure. I made it clear there was no future for us." Wyatt leaned forward slightly. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago." Emma held her breath, afraid to hope, afraid to speak and break whatever spell had brought them to this moment. "When Victoria left me at the altar, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never trust anyone again, never let anyone close." Wyatt's voice was low, earnest. "But then there was you. You didn't push or demand or try to fix me. You just cared, quietly, steadily, without asking for anything in return." He reached across the table and took her hand. "It took me too long to see what was right in front of me. You're the most genuine, kind-hearted, beautiful woman I've ever known, Emma Hayes, and I'm falling in love with you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. Of all the scenarios she'd imagined for this meeting, this hadn't been one of them. "Wyatt, you don't have to say anything," he rushed to assure her. "I know this might seem sudden to you. I know I've been blind and stupid for years. I just needed you to know how I feel, and that I'm willing to wait, to take things as slowly as you need." Emma shook her head, a tear spilling down her cheek. "It's not sudden for me, Wyatt. I've been in love with you for so long I can't remember when it started." Wyatt's expression transformed, hope blazing in his eyes. "You have?" "Yes," Emma admitted softly. "But I never thought someone like you would never look twice at someone like me." "What do you mean, someone like you?" Wyatt frowned. "Emma, you're amazing. You're strong and kind and beautiful." "I'm a farmhand," Emma reminded him. "I didn't go to college. I don't know about wine or art or any of the things Victoria knows about. And I'm a farmer who happens to have money," Wyatt countered. "I don't care about any of that stuff either. I care about the land, the animals, the changing of the seasons. I care about honest work and good people." His grip on her hand tightened. "I care about you, Emma. Just you, exactly as you are." Emma looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. The wall she'd built around her heart over the years of loving him from afar began to crumble. "I'm scared," she confessed. "What if you change your mind? What will people say?" "Let them talk," Wyatt said firmly. "And I won't change my mind. These past few weeks have shown me what really matters in life, and it's not appearances or status. It's having someone who sees you for who you are and loves you anyway." He stood up and came around the table, pulling Emma to her feet. When she was standing in front of him, he cupped her face gently in his hands. "I love you, Emma Hayes, and if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Instead of answering with words, Emma rose up on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, But when Wyatt wrapped his arms around her and pulled her closer, it deepened into something passionate and sure. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" Emma laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes, absolutely yes." News of Wyatt and Emma's relationship spread through Riverdale like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone in town was talking about how the millionaire farmer had fallen for his humble farmhand, and how Victoria Winters had stormed out of town in the middle of the night, her designer luggage piled haphazardly in her sports car. Some were scandalized, especially those who had been friends with Victoria. Others thought it was the most romantic thing they'd ever heard. But everyone agreed on one thing. They'd never seen Wyatt Lawson look as happy as he did now, walking hand in hand with Emma around the farm, his head bent toward hers, hanging on her every word. Emma found the attention unsettling at first. She wasn't used to being noticed, let alone being the subject of town gossip. But Wyatt took it all in stride, proudly introducing her as "my Emma" to anyone they met, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. 2 weeks after their first kiss in Wyatt's kitchen, he took Emma into town for dinner at Riverdale's nicest restaurant. She wore a new dress for the occasion, a simple but elegant blue sheath that Wyatt had insisted on buying for her. "You didn't need to do this," she protested when he presented her with the dress. "I have clothes." "I know," Wyatt assured her, "but I want to celebrate every milestone of our relationship, and this is our first official date in public. Humor me." The restaurant staff treated them like royalty, seating them at the best table and delivering a bottle of champagne, compliments of the house. Emma felt like she was living in a dream as Wyatt raised his glass to her. "To new beginnings," he toasted. "To us," Emma replied, touching her glass to his. After dinner, Wyatt suggested a walk along the river that gave the town its name. The night was cool but clear, with a full moon silvering the water and illuminating the path. "Are you happy, Emma?" Wyatt asked as they strolled, his hand warm around hers. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered honestly. "Sometimes, I'm afraid I'll wake up and find this was all a dream." Wyatt stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Hey, it's not a dream, it's real, we're real." He paused, drawing a deep breath. "And I hope what I'm about to ask you is something you want too." Before Emma could process what was happening, Wyatt dropped to one knee on the riverbank path, still holding her hands. The moonlight caught the determination in his eyes as he looked up at her. "Emma Hayes, I know we haven't been together long in the traditional sense, but in all the ways that matter, I've known you and respected you and valued you for years. These past weeks have only confirmed what I think I've known deep down for a long time, that you're the woman I want to spend my life with." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. "I love you with all my heart, Emma. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a ring, not a flashy diamond like Victoria's had been, but a delicate band of rose gold with a small pearl surrounded by tiny sapphires that matched Emma's eyes. Emma stared at the ring, then at Wyatt's face, so full of hope and love, and felt tears spill down her cheeks. "It's too soon, isn't it?" Wyatt said quickly, his expression falling. "I'm rushing things. We can wait, take more time." "No," Emma interrupted, dropping to her knees in front of him so they were at eye level. "It's not too soon. Yes, Wyatt. Lawson, yes, I will marry you." Relief and joy flooded Wyatt's face. With slightly trembling hands, he slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that left them both breathless. "I promise to make you happy," he whispered against her lips. "Every day, for the rest of our lives." "You already do," Emma assured him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The engagement of Wyatt Lawson and Emma Hayes became the talk of not just Riverdale, but the surrounding counties as well. Local papers ran stories with headlines like "Millionaire Farmer Finds True Love with Humble Farmhand" and "Real-Life Cinderella Story in Rural America." Emma found the attention overwhelming, but Wyatt shielded her from the worst of it, screening calls from reporters and turning down requests for interviews. "Our story is ours," he told her firmly, "not entertainment for strangers." They agreed on a small, intimate wedding, nothing like the lavish affair that had been planned for Wyatt and Victoria. Emma wanted to be married in the meadow where the horses grazed in summer with just their closest friends and family present. "Are you sure?" Wyatt asked when she shared her vision. "We can afford any venue you want, any dress, any flowers." Emma shook her head. "The farm is our life. It's where we found each other. It's where we'll build our future. That's where I want to start our marriage." Wyatt's eyes had softened with love. "This is why you're perfect for me," he said, kissing her forehead. "You understand what really matters." As they began planning their simple ceremony, Emma received an unexpected letter. It was from her younger sister, Lily, who had been away at nursing school in a neighboring state. "Dear Emma, I just heard the news about your engagement. I can't believe my big sister is marrying Wyatt Lawson. You've been in love with him forever, and I'm so happy he finally saw what an amazing woman you are. I'm finishing my exams next week. Then I'm coming home to help with the wedding preparations. I can't wait to meet your fiancé. Properly. Does it feel weird to call him that? Love you so much." Lily Emma hadn't told Wyatt much about her sister beyond the basics. Now, as they sat together on the porch swing of the main house, which was quickly becoming their shared home, as Emma spent more and more nights there, she handed him the letter. "My sister's coming home," she explained. "She's excited to meet you." Wyatt read the letter, pausing at one particular line. He looked up at Emma with raised eyebrows. "You've been in love with him forever?" Emma blushed. "Lily exaggerates." "I don't think she does," Wyatt said softly. "How long, Emma? How long have you loved me while I was too blind to see it?" Emma sighed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Since about a week after I started working here. You probably don't even remember, but there was a storm and one of the older horses, Thunder, got spooked and bolted. You spent hours searching for him in the rain, and when you found him stuck in mud by the creek, you got down in that mud yourself to free him. You were soaked and filthy and exhausted, but so gentle with that horse. That's when I knew." Wyatt's arm tightened around her. "That was 9 years ago. Like I said, Lily exaggerates," Emma tried to joke, but Wyatt wasn't smiling. 9 years, he repeated, a note of regret in his voice. "All that wasted time." "Not wasted," Emma corrected him gently. "I got to know you. I got to be part of this place that you love so much. And now we have the rest of our lives together." Wyatt turned to her, his eyes serious. "I will spend every day making up for those 9 years, Emma, I swear it." "There's nothing to make up for," she assured him. "Everything happened exactly as it was meant to." Wyatt shook his head in wonder. "How did I get so lucky to find someone with a heart like yours?" They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Finally, Wyatt spoke again. "I was thinking about the wedding. What if we had it on Harvest Day? We could combine it with the annual celebration for the farm workers and their families. Share our joy with everyone who's part of making Lawson Acres what it is." Emma looked up at him in surprise. "You'd want to do that? Share our wedding day?" "It seems right," Wyatt said thoughtfully. "This farm isn't just land and buildings and animals, it's people. Hard-working people who've been loyal to my family for generations. People like you who pour their hearts into this place. They should be part of our beginning." Emma's eyes filled with tears. This was why she loved him, not for his wealth or his status, but for his heart, his understanding of what community meant, his respect for the work that made the farm thrive. "It's perfect," she said simply. "Absolutely perfect." Victoria Winters sat in her mother's guest house in the city, scrolling furiously through her phone. She'd returned to Riverdale determined to reclaim Wyatt and his fortune, only to be humiliated once again, this time by a nobody farmhand with dirt under her fingernails. The news of Wyatt and Emma's engagement had reached her via social media, with what seemed like everyone in Riverdale posting congratulations and heart emojis under a sickeningly sweet photo of the couple, Emma's hand with its modest ring prominently displayed. "Pathetic," Victoria muttered, tossing her phone aside. "He'll regret it when the novelty wears off and he realizes what he's stuck with." But beneath her bitterness, a tiny part of Victoria recognized what she had lost. Not Wyatt's fortune, but Wyatt himself. The man who'd loved her despite her flaws, who'd offered her his heart and a life that, while not glamorous, was solid and real and true. She picked up her phone again, her finger hovering over Wyatt's number. "One call, one heartfelt apology. One promised to try harder. Could she still change his mind? But as she stared at the photo of Wyatt and Emma, she saw something in his eyes that had never been there when he looked at her, a depth of love and certainty that no amount of persuasion could shake. With a resigned sigh, Victoria deleted Wyatt's number from her phone. It was time to move on, to find another wealthy man who could give her the life she believed she deserved. Wyatt Lawson was lost to her forever. Back in Riverdale, blissfully unaware of Victoria's thoughts, Emma and Wyatt walked hand in hand through the moonlit pastures of Lawson Acres. Miracle, the foal they'd saved together, now strong and healthy, pranced alongside his mother nearby. "In just 6 weeks, we'll be married," Emma marveled, looking down at her ring. "Sometimes I still can't. Believe it." "Believe it," Wyatt said, pulling her close to his side. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Emma rested her head against his shoulder, her heart full of peace and joy. From invisible farmhand to beloved fiancé, her life had transformed in ways she'd never dared to dream. And the best was yet to come. "I love you, Wyatt Lawson," she said, her voice carrying in the still night air. "And I love you, Emma Hayes," he replied, his voice full of promise. Soon to be Emma Lawson. As they sealed their love with a kiss, both knew they had found what many search a lifetime for. A love built not on fleeting passion or material things, but on mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of quiet devotion that could weather any storm. The path to their happiness hadn't been straightforward, but perhaps that's what made it all the sweeter. Sometimes the most precious things in life are those we almost lose before we truly recognize their value. But now that Wyatt had found Emma, really found her, seen her for the treasure she was, he would never let her go again. The weeks leading up to the wedding flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. Emma's sister Lily arrived from nursing school, bringing energy and enthusiasm to the planning process. Unlike Emma, Lily was outgoing and sociable, with an easy charm that won over everyone she met, including Wyatt, who declared her the second best Hayes woman in the world after just one day in her company. "I like her," Wyatt told Emma as they lay in bed one night, his arm wrapped around her shoulders as she rested her head on his chest. "She's got your kindness, but with an extra dash of spice." Emma laughed. "She's always been the brave one. I was always too shy, too cautious." "And yet you were the one brave enough to love a grumpy, heartbroken farmer when he was at his worst," Wyatt countered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "That took more courage than you give yourself credit for." Emma smiled against his chest, still amazed at how easily they had fallen into this intimate rhythm together, as if they'd been meant for each other all along. Lily had taken over the cottage Emma had once occupied, insisting that her sister should move fully into the main house with her fiancé. "You're getting married in 3 weeks," she'd pointed out when Emma hesitated. "It's not exactly scandalous to share a roof before the wedding these days." So Emma had moved her modest belongings into Wyatt's home, their home now, and found herself surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined would be hers. Wyatt had insisted she redecorate however she wanted, eager to erase the touches Victoria had added during their engagement. "I want this house to reflect us," he'd told her. "Not my family's past or Victoria's taste. Just us, building our future, together." Emma had been mindful with her changes, respecting the history of the Lawson home while adding simpler, more comfortable elements that made the grand house feel like a true home. Fresh flowers from the garden, handmade quilts over the backs of sofas, family photos, including some of Emma's parents that she'd kept stored away for years, displayed alongside the Lawson family portraits. Wyatt had been delighted with every change, no matter how small. "It's like you're breathing life back into these rooms," he told her one evening as they sat in the living room, the space now warmer and more inviting than it had ever been. "I still can't believe this is my life now," Emma admitted, looking around at the beautiful room, at the man who was soon to be her husband. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find it was all a dream." "Not a dream," Wyatt assured her, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips. "Just the life we were always meant to have." 2 weeks before the wedding, Emma was in town shopping for last-minute items with Lily when she spotted a familiar figure across the street, Victoria's mother, Eleanor Winters, emerging from the town's only jewelry store. "Oh no," Emma murmured, instinctively stepping back into the doorway of the shop they'd just exited. "What is it?" Lily asked, following her gaze. "Who's that?" "Victoria's mother," Emma explained, quietly. "I haven't seen her since Victoria left town after Wyatt chose me." Lily's eyes narrowed. "You mean the woman who raised the spoiled princess who left Wyatt at the altar? Let me at her." "Lily, no," Emma protested, but it was too late. Lily was already crossing the street, her stride purposeful. Emma hurried after her sister, heart pounding. The last thing she wanted was a public confrontation with Eleanor Winters, a woman known for her sharp tongue and judgmental attitude. "Mrs. Winters?" Lily called as she approached the older woman. "I'm Lily Hayes, Emma's sister. I believe you know my sister, the woman marrying Wyatt Lawson in 2 weeks." Eleanor turned, her elegant features arranging themselves into a mask of disdain as she took in the Hayes sisters. "Ah, yes, the stable girl who somehow managed to snag Riverdale's most eligible bachelor. How resourceful of her." Emma felt her cheeks burn, but Lily didn't flinch. "My sister didn't snag anyone, Mrs. Winters. Wyatt fell in love with her because she's kind, hard-working and genuine, qualities your daughter might want to consider developing." "Lily," Emma hissed, mortified. Eleanor's eyes flashed dangerously. "My daughter made a mistake, it's true, but at least she had the good sense to recognize that Wyatt Lawson deserves someone from his own social circle, not someone who mucks out stalls for a living." "Emma is the stable manager," Lily corrected, her voice icy, "and she's worth 10 of your daughter." "Ladies, please," a new voice interrupted. Emma turned to find Tom, Wyatt's best friend, approaching with a concerned expression. "Everything okay here?" "Perfectly fine," Eleanor said with a brittle smile. "I was just leaving. I'm in town for the weekend visiting friends." She turned her cold gaze on Emma. "Do enjoy your harvest wedding, dear. How charmingly rustic." With that parting shot, she swept away, leaving Emma feeling as if she'd been doused in cold water. "Don't listen to her," Lily said immediately, putting an arm around her sister's shoulders. "She's just bitter that her gold-digging plan didn't work out." "Lily's right," Tom added, his kind face creased with concern. "Everyone in town knows Victoria and her mother were just after Wyatt's money. You're the best thing that's ever happened to him, Emma." Emma nodded, trying to shake off the encounter, but Eleanor's words had touched a deep insecurity. Did Wyatt really deserve someone from his own social circle, someone polished and sophisticated who knew how to run a big house and host dinner? "Parties for important contacts. I think I'm ready to go home," she told Lily and Tom softly. "We can finish shopping another day." Saturday, when Emma and Lily returned to the farm, Wyatt was in his office on a conference call, so Emma slipped away to the stables, seeking comfort in the familiar routine of checking on the horses. She found Miracle in his stall, now a strong and healthy young horse, no longer the wobbly foal they'd saved together. "Hey there," she murmured, stroking his nose. "Remember when you came into this world? That was the night everything began to change for me." "For me too," Wyatt's voice came from behind her. "That was the night I really saw you for the first time." Emma turned to find him standing in the stable doorway, his eyes soft with love. "You finished your call early. Lily came and got me. Said you had a run-in with Eleanor Winters that upset you." Wyatt crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Want to tell me about it?" Emma sighed, resting her head against his chest. "It was nothing, really. Just the usual insinuations that I'm not good enough for you." Wyatt's arms tightened around her. "That's ridiculous. If anything, I'm not good enough for you." "You don't really believe that?" Emma said with a small laugh. "I absolutely do." Wyatt pulled back slightly so he could look into her eyes. "Emma, do you know what my life was like before you? I had money and status, sure, but I was lonely. Even with Victoria, I was lonely. She didn't understand me or this place or what matters to me." He cupped her face in his hands. "You make me a better man. You remind me every day what's truly important. Your goodness, your work ethic, your kindness, those things are worth more than all the social connections in the world." Emma blinked back tears. "I just don't want you to wake up one day and regret choosing the simple farm girl over someone more suitable." "Never," Wyatt vowed fiercely. "I will never regret choosing you. You are the most suitable woman in the world for me, because you're the only one who loves me for who I really am, not what I have." He kissed her then, a deep, passionate kiss that left no room for doubt about his feelings. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Emma felt her insecurities melting away under the warmth of his love. "Now," Wyatt said, taking her hand, "let's go back to the house. Lily mentioned something about wedding cake samples that need our urgent attention." Emma laughed, letting him lead her back toward their home, Eleanor Winter's cutting remarks already fading from her mind. The day before the wedding, guests began to arrive from out of town. Wyatt's family was small, just a few cousins from neighboring states, but they were warm and welcoming to Emma, embracing her as one of their own. "Uncle Frank would have loved you," Wyatt's cousin Diane told her during the rehearsal dinner, referring to Wyatt's late father. "He always said Wyatt needed a woman with dirt under her fingernails and sunshine in her heart. Looks like he found her." Emma blushed at the compliment, touched that Wyatt's father might have approved of her. She'd heard so many stories about Frank Lawson, his hard work, his integrity, his devotion to the land, that she felt she knew him, even though he'd passed away before she came to work at the farm. The dinner was held in the big barn, cleared of equipment, and decorated with twinkling lights and flowers from the farm's gardens. Long tables had been set up to accommodate the unusual mix of guests, Wyatt's family and business associates mingling with farm workers and their families, all united in their happiness for the couple. Emma, wearing a simple but elegant cream-colored dress that Lily had insisted on buying for her, "It's not your wedding dress, but it's still a special occasion," felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. These people, from the sophisticated city cousins to the weathered farmhands, were her family now, brought together by her love for Wyatt and his for her. After dinner, as guests lingered over coffee and dessert, Wyatt tapped his glass for attention. The room quieted as he stood, his eyes finding Emma's across the table. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his deep voice carrying easily in the barn. "Tomorrow, Emma and I will be married in the South Meadow, surrounded by the land we both love. But tonight, I wanted to take a moment to tell all of you, just how lucky I am." He smiled at Emma, who felt her heart swell with love. "Many of you were at the church that day when I thought my life was over, when I was left standing alone at the altar, humiliated and heartbroken." A murmur ran through the crowd. It was the first time Wyatt had spoken publicly about the failed wedding. "What I didn't know then," he continued, "was that it wasn't an ending but a beginning. The beginning of the most important journey of my life. Because if Victoria hadn't left me that day, I might never have opened my eyes to see the extraordinary woman who was right in front of me all along." His gaze held Emma's, his eyes shining with emotion. "Emma saved me. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with quiet kindness, with warm meals left on my porch, with her gentle care for the animals and land I love. She showed me what real love looks like, and tomorrow I get to promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that love." Tears streamed freely down Emma's cheeks now. Lily, sitting beside her, squeezed her hand tightly. "So I hope you'll all join me in a toast," Wyatt concluded, raising his glass. "To Emma, who reminds us all that sometimes the most precious treasures are the ones we don't see until life forces us to look with new eyes. To Emma," the guests chorused, raising their glasses. Emma could barely see through her tears as she stood to embrace Wyatt, the room erupting in applause around them. "I love you," she whispered against his ear. "And I love you," he replied, holding her close. Always. Wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of crisp autumn morning that seemed created especially for new beginnings. Emma woke in her old cottage, where she'd spent the night in keeping with tradition. Last night, as Emma Hayes before becoming Emma Lawson, Lily was already up, making coffee and laying out everything they would need for the day ahead. The wedding wasn't until noon, giving them plenty of time to prepare without rushing. "Nervous?" Lily asked, handing Emma a steaming mug. Emma considered the question, searching her feelings. "Not really," she answered, surprising herself with the truth of it. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Lily smiled, sitting beside her sister on the cottage's small couch. "I'm so happy for you, Em, and so proud. You deserve every bit of this happiness." "Thank you," Emma said softly, leaning her head on her sister's shoulder. "For everything. For coming home to help, for standing up to Eleanor Winters, for believing in me and Wyatt. That's what sisters are for," Lily replied, giving her a squeeze. "Now, let's get you ready to marry your millionaire farmer." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Emma's simple wedding dress, an elegant A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves, was hung carefully on the back of the door. Her hair was styled in soft waves, with small white flowers woven through it. She wore minimal makeup, just enough to enhance her natural beauty. At 11:30, a knock came at the cottage door. Lily opened it to find Tom, Wyatt's best man, standing there with a small package. "From the groom," he said with a warm smile, handing it to Emma. Inside, she found a small velvet box and a handwritten note. The box contained a pair of pearl earrings that matched her engagement ring, simple and elegant. The note read, "My dearest Emma, in just a few short hours, you will make me the happiest man alive by becoming my wife. When I look back on the journey that brought us here, I can only marvel at how blind I was not to see you sooner. But perhaps we needed that time, you to grow into the strong, amazing woman you are, and me to learn what truly matters in life. I promise to spend every day showing you how much I love you, how much I value you, how much I need you by my side. See you at the meadow. I'll be the one trying not to cry when you walk toward me. All my love." Wyatt. Emma clutched the note to her heart, tears threatening to spill over. "Don't you dare cry," Lily warned, carefully applying the final touches to her sister's makeup. "Not until the ceremony, at least." With a watery laugh, Emma nodded, putting in the pearl earrings with trembling fingers. "I'm ready," she said softly. "I'm ready to marry him." The South Meadow had been transformed for the occasion. A simple arbor had been constructed where the couple would stand, decorated with wild flowers and trailing vines. Rows of chairs were arranged in a semicircle, filled with guests dressed in their Sunday best. Farm equipment had been moved away, and the distant view of rolling fields and the old oak tree that marked the farm's boundary provided a natural backdrop more beautiful than any church or fancy venue could offer. Wyatt stood beneath the arbor, handsome in a dark suit, his eyes scanning the path that led from the main house to the meadow. Tom stood beside him, offering quiet support. The local minister, who had known Wyatt since he was a boy, waited with a kind smile, ready to begin the ceremony. A hush fell over the gathering as music began to play, not the traditional wedding march, but a simple folk melody played by one of the farmhands on an acoustic guitar. Lily appeared first, walking slowly down the aisle in a dress the color of ripe wheat, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. And then there was Emma. She walked alone, having no father to give her away, but she didn't feel the lack. She moved with quiet confidence, her eyes fixed on Wyatt, her heart so full of love she thought it might overflow. As she approached, she saw Wyatt's eyes fill with tears, just as he'd predicted in his note. His face held such love, such wonder, that Emma felt as if she were the most beautiful, precious woman in the world. When she reached him, he took her hands in his voice a whisper meant only for her. "You are breathtaking." "So are you," she whispered back, squeezing his hands. The minister began the ceremony, his words washing over them as they stood together, caught in a bubble of joy that seemed to separate them from the rest of the world. When it came time for their vows, Emma spoke from her heart, her voice clear and steady despite her emotions. "Wyatt, I promise to love you faithfully and completely for all the days of my life. I promise to stand beside you through whatever challenges we face, to celebrate your victories as my own, to comfort you in sorrow, and to grow with you through all the seasons of our lives together. You are my heart, my home, my everything." Wyatt's voice was thick with emotion as he made his own promises. "Emma, you came into my life when I was lost in darkness, and with your quiet strength and boundless kindness, you showed me the way back to light. I promise to cherish you always, to protect you, support you, and honor you. I promise to be the man you deserve, faithful, honest, and true." You are the love I never expected, but always needed, and I will spend the rest of my life thanking God for bringing you to me." They exchanged rings, his a plain band of gold, hers designed to complement her engagement ring, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Wyatt drew her into a kiss that spoke of promise, passion, and forever. The guests erupted in cheers and applause as the newlyweds turned to face them, hands clasped tightly together, faces radiant with happiness. "Ladies and gentlemen," the minister announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Wyatt Lawson." The celebration that followed was everything Emma had dreamed of. Joyful, relaxed, filled with laughter and music and good food. The harvest festival and wedding reception blended together seamlessly, with farm workers and their families celebrating alongside Wyatt's business associates and relatives. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Wyatt led Emma to the center of the cleared area that served as a dance floor. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Lawson?" he asked with a smile that still made her heart flutter. "You may indeed, Mr. Lawson," she replied, stepping into his arms. As they swayed together to a slow, sweet melody, Wyatt bent to whisper in her ear, "Are you happy, Emma?" She looked up at him, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain all she felt. "More than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully. "Are you?" "Happier than I deserve," he said, his arms tightening around her. "Thank you for loving me, for saving me, for making me the luckiest man alive." "We saved each other," Emma corrected gently, "and we'll keep saving each other every day for the rest of our lives." As the last rays of sunset gilded the meadow in shades of gold and amber, the humble farm girl and her millionaire farmer husband continued their dance, surrounded by the land they loved and the people who had witnessed their journey from heartbreak to happiness. Their story was not a fairy tale, it was better, it was real, built on shared values, mutual respect, and the kind of deep, abiding love that grows stronger with each passing day. Together they had found what many search a lifetime for, a love worth waiting for, a love that sees beneath the surface to the true heart within. And as night fell over Lawson Acres, stars appearing one by one in the velvet sky above, Wyatt and Emma Lawson knew with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning of their greatest adventure yet. The end.